1 second before we get going here. Of course, equipment not ready to go. 1 second. All right, now we're ready. Welcome to Dome Theory. I'm Bobby Manning. Season's over. Nuggets are champions. See a handful of you joining in the chat here after Game 5. Nuggets got it done. I think a series that went pretty much according to how many predicted it, how many saw it playing out. And I was live here about a week ago saying good things about the Heat, respecting their effort. Surprised by the way they closed out that comeback win in Game 2. Fourth quarter strong in that game, executing, catching the Nuggets off guard, making shots. And now you look back on it, 43% three-point shooting performance against the Celtics in round 3. That second round where Julius Randle's hurt. I want to see what they shot in that series. Talking only 30% from 3 in that series, but still, go back to round 1. The Giannis injury happens early. He comes back. Heat ultimately shoot 45% from 3 in that series. So I see it in the chat already, and I think there's going to be some truth to the fact that the Heat just got historically, insanely hot from 3. Rode that to the finish line. Jimmy Butler, great throughout the playoffs as well. You saw him start 2 of 12 tonight. Decent finish, though. He's launching 5 shots from 3 in the fourth quarter. Not exactly his game. The drive into the post. Good front by Nikola Jokic there. Forced him to stop well short of the basket. Turn around and kick out a pass that KCP picked off. That effectively sealed this championship for the Nuggets tonight. He got a terrible challenge win when the Nuggets challenged, I think it was Aaron Gordon, 3-point foul on Butler in the corner. Had me thinking of that Game 6 Celtics Heat there. That was just a awful call, one of the worst I've seen. And Butler goes to the line, hits 3. Still half court, though. They're not getting free throws. They're not breaking out in transition, and the Nuggets gave them plenty of opportunities too late. You didn't see much from this Heat offense in this series. It was just a bad shot-making series. At times, decision-making from their players grew poor. That Butler turnover, the biggest example of it. And they faltered in a big way here. They hustled. I like some of the turnovers they forced tonight. After that Nuggets start where they're just canning shots, Porter's going wild in the first quarter, crowd's going crazy. It was a great crowd tonight. You thought the Heat were just going to fade away, and they did end up making this a game with some aggressive defensive plays at the top of the zone. The zone, throughout this series, I mean, if you're going to give the Heat credit for anything, I do think the zone slowed Denver enough in this series to give you 2 competitive games tonight. I like this game, as sloppy as it got. I like the competition and the back and forth between both teams. Kyle Lowry even hit a bunch of shots. And I think the zone deserves a ton of credit for that. You saw in the 3 and 4 games in Miami, I think less of it. Probably something that the Heat wanted to go back and do more of, I think, especially in the second halves of those games, to just keep the Nuggets at bay. Because when they try to go man it's game over. There's too many mismatches, too much cutting and movement from the Nuggets. Speaking of that cutting, Aaron Gordon, an incredible move looking back on it. I think I talked about this a little bit last week. Would they trade Gary Harris, a first-round pick in 2025 that's protected, a little bit of salary matching in there, RJ Hampton, who's not on the Magic anymore? The Nuggets effectively, and I think we said this at the time because we did have a trade deadline show that day, got Gordon for nothing. And I know the Celtics were involved there. I think the reporting at the time was that the Nuggets were going to want Marcus Smart there. And obviously, Smart's much better than Gary Harris. But I think they wanted that veteran to come there and play with the team for multiple seasons and help their young guys grow, which Harris actually did these last couple of years. He's actually going to be a interesting trade piece this summer. I think he had a decent year. He's played well there in Orlando, but you're looking back at what you got there. If you're the Magic, who did destroy the Bulls in the Nikola Vucevic trade that same year, could even say swindled the Celtics a little bit, even though the price wasn't high. 2 second-round picks, getting off Evan Fournier, whose contract expired that summer, and getting anything back. Sometimes those guys end up being buyouts, and they, I think, beat the Celtics by a hair in that trade. Gordon, though, a massive steal for the Nuggets. His cutting off of Jokic, his ability to guard the bigs when they pull Jokic out in the pick and roll and defend backside. He had a tremendous play late in this game. I want to say a block on a jump shot or something like that late. I just loved his play throughout this series. And at least going into tonight, look at his stats here. And not exactly the running mate for Jokic, but that third piece that you often need to win these championships. Gordon gave you that in this series, shooting 67% from the field coming in this one, 71% from three. He reached another level on this team that you thought he might. Only 1 of 6 tonight, but still an impactful guy, a 30-minute guy at the wing. The offseason additions, you look at KCP, who wins his second championship tonight, a good defender. You had 2 good defenders in KCP and Bruce Brown. Obviously, you're going to look back and say the Nuggets were going to beat the Heat no matter what here. But if it did end up being Celtics-Nuggets, I still would have picked the Nuggets because of all those perimeter defenders, Gordon, KCP, Bruce Brown. That's enough to stand in front of Brown and Tatum and cause some trouble. And I thought Jokic's defense went up and down throughout this series. More good than bad, though, by far. Bunch of good stuff from him guarding the pick and roll. Defensive rebounding, dominant. It's obviously a part of the game on that end. And then those wings and the point guard play. You can't say enough about Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray played well enough in this series to at least make you think, is Jokic going to be the MVP? Yeah, he's going to be the MVP. But Murray was really good. That 12 assist, no turnover game. Coming in tonight, 42 from 3, 46 from the field. In this game, goes 6 of 15 with 14, 8 and 8. Feels like an 8-10 assist guy every single night. And the connection between Murray and Jokic, the pick and roll, inverting it both ways. I love teams that can do that, and they do that. It's astounding how fluid they play offense. The shot making, that 3 in the second half Murray hit, a real backbreaking moment for the Heat as they drove back in this game. And throughout, that's a guy I don't think the Celtics would have had an answer for. I don't. This shiftier, quicker, shot-making point guards like that, De'Aaron Fox, throw him on the list. Those type of guys, I think, give the Celtics more trouble than anyone. Bad turnover late. I see the comment there. He threw one away to no man's land in the post. They got the Heat going in transition. And as I said, Miami puts on a little bit of a rally tonight that makes for this great inning. But then he hits that elbow jumper, and huge shot making from him. I loved his game, loved his reaction. You get to the post game, he's crying. All these other guys, jubilation across the board. First championships for many of them, up to and including Jeff Green. Played a little bit in this series. You heard him mic'd up throughout. The vocal component he brought to this team, obviously impactful. The Nuggets signed him to a 2-year deal a couple off seasons ago. He picks up the player option for this year and ends up being a nice veteran presence for this team, and at least another guy that you can count on. He had a nice corner three in, I think, game 4, I want to say. It's just a nice player to have. And, of course, I wanted Bruce Brown in Boston over the offseason. He ends up coming in for $6 million. These additions, it's great GM work across the board by Tim Connolly, who's now in Minnesota and is going to go down for making one of the worst trades ever in the Rudy Gobert deal upon arrival there. You wonder how much ownership's involved at that level and making a big decision like that, but he pushed the button on it. Otherwise, though, this Nuggets team largely his. The offseason additions are now this front office's, and those were key moves. Ultimately, though, this core, Gordon, Jokic, the second-round pick, best second-round pick ever, biggest steal in NBA draft history, the greatest postseason in NBA history, statistically at least. The league leader in points, assists, rebounds. Never been done. You look back at Wilt Chamberlain and the unreal stats he put up. Things that you couldn't believe. How did that happen? How is that possible? It doesn't even seem conceivable someone could do that. 100 points, 50 rebounds. I think he averaged. I want to look up Wilt's reference page because it's one of the most exciting basketball references page you can look at. His highest scoring season, 50.4 points per game. So let's say 25 years from now, they're going to be looking up Jokic's stats. First, they're going to say, 24, 12, and 10, and he didn't win MVP on 63% shooting, 38 from 3. Then you got to go to the playoffs. 30 a game, 13 rebounds, 10 assists again in the playoffs. 54 from the field, 47 from 3 coming into this one. He's obviously the best player in the league at this point. I've long been a Giannis guy. This run leaves little doubt. You can put up the regular season silly stats that he did in the postseason and effectively tear through some, I'd say, solid competition. The Lakers were hitting their stride in the conference finals, NBA finals. You run into this Heat team that all 3 teams they beat probably would have put up a better fight in this spot. But, you run into the Suns, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant doing their thing in round 2. Minnesota, it's a tough first-round team. So I don't think you take anything away from the path they drew here. It's a good 4 teams they beat. And they're now going into the future looking like a team that will continue to compete for this on a year-in, year-out basis. I don't know who in the West can step up and play at their level as a team if they're healthy. The Jamal Murray component in particular, I think, just puts them head and shoulders above that field in the West. And, of course, that's the level they played at this season. The Ja Morant suspension's coming. I was joking a little bit with my group chat guys. Adam Silver's up there with the mic after the game, and he was ranting and raving throughout the postseason about Morant and saying that the suspension's coming after the finals. Was he going to do it at the podium? He didn't. He also didn't give out the MVP trophy. No one did. Of course, the great late Bill Russell used to always do it. Jokic basically avoided the ceremony. So Bruce Brown's carrying it around for a little bit. He gets cited with the MVP trophy, and then Michael Malone finally handles it. But you never saw the moment Jokic actually got announced MVP out there because he didn't want it. He's with his kids and he's I love the brothers hoisting Michael Malone up later. It was a great celebration. The crowd was awesome. This, of course, is a Nuggets team. Um, as I said, Memphis, Phoenix, Clippers, Lakers. I don't see these teams continuing to compete with them on the West. So this is the kind of team you're going to be looking up at if you're the Celtics, I think, and saying you're going to see this team in the NBA Finals. So what do you need to compete with them? But historically, this is a team that was overdue. I think an original incarnation of the Nuggets existed in one of those old leagues, and this team didn't see a lot of great basketball through their years. I think they had a few decent seasons in the 80s. You had those Carmelo Anthony seasons, but the best basketball fans in Denver have seen at this point is this Nikola Jokic era. Despite some disappointments, you lose round one last year. Super injured team. Michael Porter Jr., you need to hand him, of course. Without Jamal Murray, he's looking every bit as valuable as Jokic for this team's playoff viability. But a very disappointing loss a couple of years ago to the Suns. Year before that, you get to the finals, the West Finals in the bubble, but you lose pretty badly when you get there. And a tough 7-game loss to the Trailblazers in 2019. Before that, they were out of the playoffs for 5 years. That 2013 team I really loved with Andre Iguodala. They were a fun run and gun team that ended up losing to that first great Steph Curry team in 2013. Kenneth Faried's on there. That was the George Karl team that he got fired after losing in that first round. Tough battle with the Lakers the year before that. They lose in 7. And then, those Carmelo years in the West Finals against the Lakers. That was a great series, even though it only went 6 games. Chauncey Billups. You had some Allen Iverson seasons in there at the end. But again, you're not rattling off these awesome seasons. They're a perennial playoff team, more or less, but they're never a team that sniffed championship contention. And for them to just steamroll their way there this time around, impressive. I enjoyed it. I was genuinely surprised by it. I was starting to wonder when Jokic might hear a little bit of that noise that some of the other great players did for not winning championships. And the first moment you could even whisper it, he goes out and has one of the great playoff runs we've seen. So nothing you can say to him. He's got every accomplishment other players across the league look up at now, and I can only marvel at. Save for LeBron James at the end there, and Kevin Durant, and a few of those guys with real built-out careers that will go into the Hall of Fame tomorrow. Among the younger core players in the league, I think Jokic now has the best resume. The best chance to, I think, join that echelon of players that at the very, very top end, your Kevin Durant's, your LeBron James, who are joining the all-time greats. Jokic has a chance to do that now. Statistically, nothing like him all time. A chance to stack up multiple titles here, which you need to do. And there'll certainly be more MVP momentum in his direction, I would think. And I hate to do the playoff take back, but with the context of this postseason and how it did go for both players, even considering the MVP and the Embiid injury, tough to argue for Embiid over Jokic now, seeing what happened here in the end. And we know it's a regular season award. Embiid had every bit the resume Jokic did. At that time, I said it's closest ever. It's basically a coin flip. So I go Embiid, the scoring, their inability to do anything when he took time off the floor. Denver did a little better in that department this season. The defense, I always loved the defensive advantage Embiid brought over Jokic. But you think of the passing gap between them, much larger than the defensive gap. Jokic, undoubtedly an all-timer. The reaction, all-time too. It's good. It's good. We got the job done. Can go home now. Jokic's lasting quote after this. I don't want to say forgetful NBA Finals, but not one of the best. Not one of the great ones we've seen here. And if you're already interested in betting next season's champion, it's a little early. I think we'll talk some draft. There's some draft futures here. There's a bunch of futures available for next season at FanDuel.com, the official sports wagering partner of CLNS Media, Dome Theory, as well as the NBA. So plenty to bet on ahead of next season. I'm sure you all want to see how the offseason is going to play out here and make some better decisions about what's going to happen in the future. But if you see some advantages coming for you, go to FanDuel.com/Boston and get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. You want to lay down $1,000 on a future champion for next year? Have at it. You won't lose. It will come right back in your account. FanDuel.com/Boston. Love them. The site's great. Baseball, hockey, championship series continues. Football right around the corner. Some great coverage over on the Patriots side. You want to check that out over at Patriots Press Pass. I've enjoyed their live shows each day. On FanDuel.com, make every moment more when you head over there. It's FanDuel.com/Boston. Up to $1,000 no sweat first bet. Just check out their site. See how you like it. I want to get some more people's thoughts on Charles Lee coming in to assist Joe Mazzulla here. I got out most of my thoughts in our reaction video on Celtics All Access. This, of course, if you weren't here for that, if you missed it, a name I loved when I first heard Jake Fisher connect him to the Celtics. Even when Mike Budenholzer first got fired, my first inclination, just hearing what people say about him, knowing his input in that Bucks program, and past jobs he received team interest for, which included the Celtics in 2021. Defense, personality management, a real mindset on helping a team get through the regular season, which of course those Bucks teams had to do through guys sitting, through load management, through the doldrums of the season, which I think this Celtics team in particular is going to be challenged by immensely. This hire is huge, and I love the Sam Cassell one too from a personality standpoint. It's clear these guys wanted and needed a former player who played at the highest level. But Charles Lee, in terms of some of the strategic acumen, the experience, coaching alongside a great head coach and Mike Budenholzer. Say what you will about his playoff resume, his regular season teams constantly excelled through both Atlanta and Milwaukee. I think will bring some scheme elements from Milwaukee to help a Boston defense that wants to drop, that wants to lure teams into mid-rangers, that wants to protect the rim. I'm super intrigued by how his scheming and Joe Mazzulla's will be able to open up Robert Williams' defensive game, particularly when Rob's at that drop position at center. That's an area I think where he needs to show massive improvement this year, because more often than not, they dropped Horford at that position, and Horford didn't protect the rim great this year. You're going to have to do that with Rob more often this year, I would assume. So I hope defensively, Lee's able to help tighten some things up, maybe take on the focus on that end while Joe Mazzulla handles the offensive schemes and game plans. In terms of your first two hires here, and they will need more, Lee is all I could have asked for from this team. This is a guy who interviewed for Toronto, who interviewed for Detroit, who came an inch from landing that job before the Pistons turned around and offered Monty Williams $78 million. No shame in losing that coach battle here. And again, I find it important, if you're going to give Mazzulla a chance here, to not have him looking over his shoulder at former head coaches with huge names. Lee, Cassell, these guys, they have real head coaching potential. And if time comes, as I said, you do have a great name with tons of potential here in Lee that you could pivot to if you need to. But ultimately, and I know how much distaste many of you have in the chat for Missoula after the first season, amazingly, despite the highs. And I have my reservations with him too, in terms of bench usage, everybody's timeout questioning. It improved as the season went on, but you do want to see him get a little more aggressive with those in terms of stopping runs and reining this team in. They clearly just needs that done to them if they're going to move forward with the score. And that's another question for another day. I know John, Jimmy on the Garden Report, they don't like this conversation, but when you entered last season and exited in particular the regular season so weak at that assistant spot, so pummeled by Will Hardy's departure and Ime Udoka even at least as a bench position and Damon Stoudemire, you needed to restock there. Coaches who even this team admitted had loyalty to Ime and I'm sure got hurt by that departure. You're now bringing in guys who are committing from day one to Missoula, who want to work here under him, who want to support him, who buy into what he's doing here and this team going forward into the future. It's gonna be an improvement. There's no way around it. And I wish they could have got Steven Silas too. I think he brings a massive amount of experience going back to his early days under his dad and a connection to Boston, which I think is cool in Cassell's case. But Lee, an outside perspective, a guy who's trying to make a name for himself, I think there's some Udoka parallels, not the player component, but just in terms of the mindset. I think the defensive acumen that he's developing and just that connection with players, an ability to get through to them. I think this guy's going to do a great job. I've just heard so many good things. I've seen him in so many races for head coaching. I'm putting myself out there and saying this guy's going to make a massive difference. I really believe that. And Cassell's nice to have as well here. So this was exciting news if you're a Celtics fan. I think a lot of you out there feel that too. Do you want to get to some other interesting news before we get out of here? And if you have any questions, feel free to throw them out. It's now, of course, NBA draft season. And I do want to shout out our friends at Athletic Greens before we get into our question and answers lead and our final segment here. athleticgreens.com/garden is giving you a 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs when you make your first purchase over there. That's 5 free travel packs of vitamins, minerals, adaptogens, probiotics. It's that AG1 formula that gives you just about everything you need to live an energetic, healthy summer. You want to be out there glowing this summer. This is the way to do it. And get yourself feeling right and get yourself everything you need. You might get these things in different places. You might get some of them, but this is making sure you get all of those vitamins, minerals, and more. The 75 of them that are so highly rated. Head over there, get their cool gear, and just check it out and see if it's for you. The ratings are through the roof. If you don't take my word for it, just go see what people are saying. AG1, athleticgreens.com/garden. Read this today, Shams Charania, and I think it's no secret that the Trailblazers are going to shop their number 3 overall pick. And it's a deal we've debated here on the Garden Report. It's a intriguing one, I think, for a lot of teams that may be uneasy about one of their stars given this new CBA structure that the NBA is about to start. And so if you can trade your star for a contract that's going to be up sooner, a contract that's less, or a player that's about to start a massive deal, and Jaylen Brown certainly comes to mind here. But so do other players like Karl-Anthony Towns, who Eric Pincus at Bleacher Report threw out, could be gone in the coming weeks in Minnesota if that's how they want to decide to cut costs there. Certainly sees a possibility before that extension kicks in that's going to pay him $50 million a year. It's, of course, the extension that the Celtics could have to offer Jaylen Brown this summer if they want to retain him long term. And Zion Williamson not making supermax money, but about to make that big rookie scale extension money in his next contract here. I wonder what's going to happen with this Portland pick. It's the biggest decision coming in this draft here, and it's complicated further by Charlotte's wise indecision over that number 2 pick. Feels like it's going to be Brandon Miller based on all the reporting so far, but last year, if you remember at this time, the Magic sent smoke signals far and wide that they were drafting Jabari Smith Jr., and it felt done. And then draft night comes and they pick Paolo Banchero, and that seemed like the plan the whole time. Would it shock anyone, even given the guards on that Hornets roster? LaMelo Ball, Terry Rozier, good players, but when they held a showcase in Vegas before the season and called this 2-player draft with Victor Wembanyama, of course, going down with LeBron James and others as the most hyped prospects ever. You understand that, but Scoot Henderson, the dynamic playmaking guard on the G League Ignite, when he's hailed as, all right, if you miss Victor, you're missing an all-time prospect. But if you get Scoot, you're getting one of the great prospects in recent history. How does that guy fall to 3? Because the Hornets have LaMelo and Rozier? I don't see it. And so it's going to force teams to go to Charlotte and make some offers there. And Portland's trying to sell this 3rd pick because the Hornets are sending a smokescreen, I feel like at least, that they're going with Miller. So everyone looks at 3 and says, we can move up to 3 and get Scoot. Even if we trade our star in the process, or one of our stars. It's a similar situation in New Orleans where they have Ingram, Minnesota. Anthony Edwards is their future, regardless whether you like Towns or hate him. I think everyone can agree the future in Minnesota is Edwards. And same in Boston to some degree. And of course, no reporting whatsoever that the Celtics intend to shop Brown this offseason. But if you're going to do it, this is the deal, I think. Kevin O'Connor threw out there Anthony Simons is available in these kinds of deals. Shaedon Sharpe will not be, and I understand that. You want to keep that guy as part of your future core. You see that guy as potentially your next up-and-coming star. Not assured yet, but you saw enough flashes in year 1 to see that through. So you're not going to get Sharpe in these deals. Jeremy Grant's a free agent. That gets tricky. You're sending up more salary, and you're making a bigger deal. But the Pelicans have salaries to do that. The Celtics have salaries to do that. Minnesota even has that Mike Conley salary. So things are going to get interesting fast here. The draft is in 9 days. The Trailblazers, if they want to keep Damian Lillard, and he's doing that thing, as we talked about last week, where he makes noise and professes destinations and dreams of other places where he could win while pledging loyalty to the Blazers, most importantly. He wants them to get someone. Can they get Zion? I don't know. Probably not. Can they get Towns? Seems like a long shot. I know, as our guy Sean Hyken has said here on this podcast before, they dream of Embiid. Not yet. So you need someone now. You need someone to carry you through the next season and keep Lillard's interest there and keep this team competitive enough to stand through. And Jalen's an intriguing piece in that case. Problem is, he signed for 1 year. And if there's any discontent in Boston at all, it's that he's not the number 1, or it's not his team, or he doesn't get that free reign to really show what he's capable of. And it's going to almost be the exact same situation in Portland, maybe even less opportunity. So does that appeal to him? Is that something he's really going to push for? Because, again, based on Brad Stevens' comments and the overall vibe here, and even as I said in my reaction to the Charles Lee thing, Cassell and Lee coming here, you think that's to work with the 2 young stars. So I don't know how this contract negotiation is going to go. It just feels like Brown will be in Boston this year, and we can debate whether that's the right move. I'm more convinced than ever they should see what's out there, and this is certainly something that looks like it's out there. But Shams Charania reporting, Pelicans getting out ahead of other teams that could potentially target that number 3 overall pick where Scoot Henderson could fall. Do you like the Thompson twins? Do you like Brandon Miller? That doesn't intrigue me as much, and there's certainly no guarantee Henderson falls there until the Hornets select at number 2. Will the Hornets shop that pick? Probably not, given where they're at. Will they take Miller over Henderson? I won't believe it until I see it. But more draft coverage coming throughout the week here. We'll have guests. I have a couple ideas of people that might come on later this week. We'll have our group chat edition on Wednesday. And shout out to FanDuel, Athletic Greens, and the Denver Nuggets, NBA champions. That's a wrap on the 2023 season. If you missed it, we talked about the funniest, best Celtics moments, highlights, a fun season. Around the league, there was a great Twitter thread going around as well of the funniest moments around the league this year. Maybe we'll get into that later this week on the group chat edition because I do want to kick around some of the funny things that happen around the league this year. But the Celtics had enough for me to almost get to 100. I'm going to post that on clnsmedia.com tomorrow, my 100 favorite Celtics moments this year, because there were 100. And that's a wrap here on this edition of Dome Theory. This is my podcast. It's back 3 times a week. Is going to be my goal here through the off season and into next year. So subscribe. It's been going for 110s and under the new version, but I've had this podcast rolling since 2016, back when it was the Bobcast. So appreciate you listening here. Subscribe, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and more. Wherever you listen, it's available, so go check that out if you want to listen the next day or whenever it pops up. If you missed the live stream here, go subscribe at one of those spots. Dome Theory podcast here on CLNS Media. Of course, we'll see you on Wednesday night for our next edition of the show. Stay tuned for a live edition of the Garden Report later this week. And like I said, draft content coming. We're diving into those scouting reports, potential targets for the Celtics at number 35. The draft is next Friday, believe it or not. And we'll see if the Celtics make any big moves up to the top of the draft. Thanks to everybody who joined us here live. Thanks to everybody joining on demand whenever you hear this, listen to this. And that's it here. Dome Theory. Catch you later this week. Bobby Manning, I'm out.